Hey guys, it's Logan again. Welcome back. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make reusable buttons in Gamemaker Studio 2. And making GUIs is pretty painful and annoying most of the time in Gamemaker, but I'm going to show you this technique and kind of give you a tool so that you can easily add buttons to your game and not have to deal with any hassle. So some of the features of these buttons are going to be animated, easy to create new ones and change the behavior of it when you click it. It's going to be resizable with the text centerings, and the text is going to be dynamic, so you don't actually have to use text on your sprites. You just give it a text and it will draw it dynamically on the button and then scale the text according to that. So let's go ahead and get started. So first of all, my project is just a basic, I just have a sprite button or a button sprite. This is an important step. Make sure the button is kind of pretty large, basically the max size that you're going to use for buttons in your game. Okay, this way you can kind of figure out what size you need your font to be. Okay, so make sure the button's pretty decently sized, and then you'll want to find a font. So to get the correct font size, you're actually going to want to play around with it a bit. But I'm using Impact and 38 on my font size, with my button size being 380 by 98. And that seems to work decently. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. First of all, we're going to create a generic button object, button parent. We're not actually going to attach a sprite to this one. This handles all of our code and behavior, basically. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to the create event, and we're gonna set up some properties. So it's gonna be initialize. And the properties we need, first we need to get the center of the button, and that's easy to get. So we're gonna say button center X, and this is simply gonna be the sprite width divided by 2. We're gonna do the same for the height, button center Y equals sprite height divided by 2. Okay, and then now that we have the center of our button, we next need to kind of set up the different properties our button can have. So what properties can our button have? Well, let's go to our variable definitions first of all. And we're gonna set up the text of our button, and the action of our button is gonna be here. We're gonna do that in a minute. And then the color of our font as well. So let's go ahead and add properties. If you don't have the new version of GameMaker, you'll have to do this in a create event, and then you'll have to call event inherited from your your child button. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and add a variable, and we're gonna call this my text. Okay, this is gonna be the button text. We'll call it button text. Actually, it's more accurate. And we're gonna make it a string, and then we're just gonna call this default. So this is like the default text of the button, right? And next, let's add a color, and we're gonna say text color, and this is going to be a color type. And the default color, I'll just make it white, okay? And there you go. So now we have our basic 2 properties for our button, and we're gonna add a third later, as I said. And now let's go to the draw event, and let's try to draw our button. So we're gonna do it in the standard draw event. The first thing we're gonna wanna do, since we're overriding the normal draw of GameMaker objects, is we need to call draw self to make sure we're actually drawing our own sprite. Okay, and description, I'm gonna just put draw button. Okay, so we're drawing the self. Now we need to just draw the text. So we're gonna say draw text, and we're gonna draw it at our X position plus our button center. So we're gonna say button center X, and our Y position plus our button center Y. Okay, and then we have our text drawn. That's it. Oh, wait, sorry, we actually have to draw the text, and the text is gonna be called button text. That's what we named the variable. Okay, and before we do this, we actually need to set the font. So we actually need to do draw set font, and I'm gonna set it to my 38 font here. Okay, there we go. So there's that, and then let's go to our create event once more. Is that where I'm trying to go? Sorry, draw set font, draw text. Oh no, that's not all we need to do. We're actually going to draw the text transformed, okay? And what I mean by transformed is it's gonna be scaled depending on the button size. Okay, this is why you need to find a font that works with the size of your button. So when you draw the text scaled, it'll still line up okay. All right, so let's go ahead and try it. We're just going to do image X scale for our X scale and image Y scale for our Y scale. Pretty easy. And then the angle is just going to be 0. There we go. One more thing we need to do is actually set the color of our text. So we could simply say draw set color. And this is going to be text color. It's that second property we set. And we need to reset the draw color after we draw the text. So we're going to say draw set color, and we're going to reset it back to white. See white, okay? Awesome. So now we're drawing our font, or we're setting our font. We're drawing our button and our text with the correct color. And yeah, so that's about it for that. Now we are going to have one issue. If you actually check my button, I have 2 sprites. Two images in the sprite. The first one is basically the up, and then the second one's when you're clicking the button, okay? So let's actually go ahead and incorporate that. The first thing we need to do is in the create event, say image speed equals 0, and our image index is going to be default to 0, so that's fine. But what we need to say is on left mouse left pressed. This is when you initially press it. We're going to say button down. We're going to say image index equals 0, okay? Or sorry, this is 1, so we're changing it to the second image in our sprite. And then our left pressed, sorry, our on mouse leave actually. So when our mouse leaves the button, we don't want it to be pressed anymore. So on mouse leave, we're going to say button up. We're going to say image index equals 0, okay? And on left released, we're going to do something kind of special. So on left released, we're actually going to execute our action, okay? So what's this going to do? Well, this is going to actually call a script we haven't set yet, but we can go ahead and write the code for it. We're going to say script execute, and we're going to execute on click action. This is going to be a variable we're going to set that actually references a script, okay? So let's actually go ahead and make a script that should be executed when basically a default button is set up. So I'm going to go to my create event, and I'm going to say default, let's say button, default action, default click action. This is going to be our default button. And this is just simply going to show a message executing default action. So when we click the button, it should say this if we haven't overridden the script. So now we can go back to variable definitions. Once again, if you're using an older version of Gamemaker, you'll do this in the create event. And I'm going to add a variable name, and I'm going to call it button on click. So is that what I said? Yeah. Oh, no, on click action. That's the name of the variable. So it's going to be on click action. Okay. And we're going to set it to be a resource. Now we can actually select a script from here. This is going to be our button default click action script. You can do a search here if you needed as well. I'm going to do my button default click action. And that's what's actually going to get executed. Now we do have one issue. If I were to have 2 buttons currently, and I clicked the top one and drug off to the second one before I let go of the button, it would actually execute the second button's script, and we don't want that. So we're actually going to create a variable in our create event and call it clicked, and we're going to set it to default false. And obviously when we click the button, then we want clicked to be true. And then when we release the button, we want to check if clicked is true before we execute the script. So we're going to say if clicked, then script execute. And one more thing, on our mouse leave, we want clicked to be set to false. So if we click the button and drag off, we're going to unset click, okay? So yeah, that'll work. And that is it. Now you can create as many buttons as you want, change the text, change the action, and you don't have to do anything. So let's go ahead and make our actual button object. Actually, we can do it here. So let's actually, yes, give this button a sprite. I actually didn't think about this before. So we can actually give this button a sprite and we're done. You can now make as many buttons as you want. So if I go to my room, my playtest, and I drag a button in, and then I drag a second button, and I drag a third. I'm just going to drag 4 buttons in here. And I'm going to double click this one. I'm going to leave this one to be default actually, and I'm going to name it. You can actually name it, give a kind of a reference that you can see over here. I'm going to name this default. This is going to be my default button. You'll see that. I'm going to double click this one and call this one new game. Okay. And then I'm going to go to its variables, and I'm going to change the string. I got to click this pencil so I could change it. I'm going to say new game. Next, I need to create a script for its action. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say new script button, and I'm going to say new game click action. So this is what's going to happen when the new game button's clicked. And I'm just going to say show message starting new game. Awesome. And maybe I'll change its color. So let's go to text color. So I can actually change the font color now. Change it to like a reddish. And then I'm going to go here. Actually, instead of the font color, you could actually replace it with just the image blend of the button. And then you could literally just change the color here, and that would actually change the font color, I believe. But that might actually change the sprite color too. I don't know. Oh, it actually changes the sprite color. So never mind, don't do that. Bad idea. But there you go. You can actually change the button color now as well. Okay, so double click, and this one's going to be load game. You'll see that reflects over here, so you can kind of see what it is. And I can go to the variables, and let's change the text to load game. And let's keep the color. I need to make a new action, and I recommend making a folder for button actions in this case. So I could drag all those actions in here. And now this one's going to be loading game. And I need to rename it to load game click action. Load game click action. Okay. And I'll change the script here in the resources to that load game click action. Where are you? Button actions. So you actually get the folder here. Load game click actions is my script to execute when this button's clicked. Okay. And let me make sure I got the script right in this one. Okay, so I actually need to change the second one script because I forgot. This one's going to be the new game click action, the one with the red text. And this last one I'm going to keep default, but I'm going to resize it, and I'm going to show you that resizing the button actually works. Okay, and I'm also going to change the button color because we can do that. There we go. And it's blending it with the current color. If you had a white button, you could actually change it to any color without this kind of weird blend happening. So you could use any color you wanted, but I just have a green button. Okay, so there we go. Using one object, I now have 4 different buttons, and it was that easy to create the 4 different buttons. So let's go ahead and check it out. I actually haven't tested it thus far, so maybe there's something wrong. Okay, so we're getting this little issue with the text not being centered. So one last thing we need to do. We need to go to the draw event, and we need to set the font alignment. So we could say draw set font, wait, align, what was it? Draw align, yeah, draw set align right here. Draw set H align, FA, center. And then we need to align vertically, and so we'll say draw set V align, FA. This is actually gonna be middle, okay? So there we go. So now our text will actually be drawn centered. So there we go. I have 4 different buttons, all with different actions, and you can see I only have one button object, and it's very easy for me to add. And you'll see they're animated, all of them. And if I click new game, we get starting new game. If I click default, we get executing default action, load game, loading game. And if I click the default down here, it's another default action, but I changed a couple properties. So let's say I'm not happy with that. I can easily go into the playtest. I can change this new game. I can go to the variables and change it to new game, hello. And it's still gonna be centered, and it's gonna have different text now. But maybe I wanna change the font color as well. It was red, I'll change it to like a yellow, okay? And yeah, that's about it. I don't know what else to say about it. Let's see. Maybe I could duplicate this button and grow it real big. It doesn't look so good. The text doesn't look as good when you just scale it. That's why I'm saying the biggest you expect to use a button in your game, find your font for that, make your sprite equal to that. It's easier to scale down without losing quality. So there you go, I have new game hello. I can easily change my text. And now I can actually change my text at runtime as well if I would like. So in the game, if I wanted, after I click this button, the text to change, I literally just have to change my text. So let's actually go ahead and see that. So in my new game click action, after I click the button, maybe I just change its text. So I'm gonna say button text equals, and I'm just gonna say new button clicked. There we go. So now I just changed the action of that button. So when I click that new game button, you should see the text actually change in it. There you go, new button clicked. And it's obviously going off because the font is large and I can only have so many characters. But you could actually scale your sprite if you wanted to based on the font width and whatnot, but I thought this was pretty dang good for having a reusable button in Gamemaker. So there you go. Now you have it. You can easily create a reusable button, a single button that you can have do whatever you want. You can change the color, you can change the font color, all within the room editor. You don't have to even leave this. The only thing you need to do is add an action, basically a script that says what your button does when it's clicked. And then obviously set that to the on-click action in this properties box, which you just select here, and then I can select from any of my scripts or whatever. So I can have it execute that script when the button's clicked. So that's all you gotta do. Anyways, I hope you liked, and if you did, then like and subscribe. Support me on Patreon at patreon.com/GloomyToad. Follow me on Twitter at GloomyToad. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.